Holland. Back to your calls. Are there lessons that we can learn from yet another terrorist attack on these shores? And also, if you just want to, for a change, instead of saying division, you just want to ring up and say that these guys who apprehended that awful man, disarmed him when he was waving knives around, when he'd already fatally injured 2 people. Well, if you just want to join me in praising those brave individuals, that's exactly what you can do. 0345 6060973. You can text 84850. You could tweet at LBC. Of course, if you were a witness to what happened, then you can let us know your version of events. Here's Abbas in Redbridge. Morning to you, Abbas.
Hi there, good morning.
I was in the Afghan shop on Portobello just a couple of days ago or so buying... What was I buying? I think I might have been buying a light bulb. Anyway, lovely chaps there, and it's opposite Tesco on the Portobello. And I said, had they been in touch with Abbas recently? I said, I hadn't had him on the show for a while, and now here you are.
You seem to be in the Afghan shop quite a lot, Matt.
Well, they've got everything you need.
Every time we speak.
I promise you I'm not on commission. I think it's wonderful. I like local shops where there's a sense of atmosphere and where you can kind of have a chat. And there's something rather special about people who set up their own small businesses and make a success of them. And it's just very useful. It's very handy because they've just...
Maybe if I'm in the area, I'll actually pop in and just say hello to those guys.
I think you must do.
On a sort of a more sobering note, I mean, I think, it's, there's a time, I think, and a place for comments. And at this time, what we should really be doing is, it's a mourning period. We should be very obviously concerned and upset about the loss of life, about how those families must be feeling who've lost their loved ones. And to some extent, of course, celebrating the bravery of people who've overcome, potentially an incident that could have taken many more lives if these people hadn't stepped forward. But I think what we should not do is we should not make it a sort of a political point-scoring exercise. And I think it's distasteful when we start saying somehow this person is responsible or that person is responsible because, we've got it in for them and we've always spoke negatively about them. And I think to bring that in at this time, I think is very distasteful. I don't think we should do that. There's a time and a place. And I think once the mourning period, as I say, a few days or whatever has gone by, then of course we can look at things more critically. But and again, to criticise the intelligence services and say, they're concentrating too much on this or too much on that. I mean, really, how do we know, as bystanders, as civilians, how much information they have and what they're looking at and what sort of tip-offs they're getting? We don't. So to make these sort of comments, I think is...
Could I just before my many listeners, let's hope anyway, start to think that you're criticising me. I don't think you're criticising me, are you?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I'm criticising really...
You're welcome to if you wish, but I just don't want to be accused of being criticised if I'm actually not being.
No, not at all. I'm actually, if I'm sort of going to be specific, I think the call that you had from Finchley, the lady,
Abbas,
I think, it's distasteful. I mean, really, to say that the mayor is somehow responsible for terrorist attacks and to link him in that way, it's very distasteful. And I think it's just completely below, it's just not the way. It's not I don't think it's the British way. It's not the English way. It shouldn't be the London way. We should rise above these type of, rhetoric, especially at these sort of times, and we should unite as a people. And we all stand up against these sort of things because these people are mindless. They don't ask questions as to who you are, what your affiliations are, what your religion is, before they... I mean, if you remember the 7/7 bombings, there were many Muslims on the buses as well. The September 11th, many Muslims in the building. These people, they don't care. They just do whatever they do for whatever geopolitical or crazy issues that they have going on in their minds. And that's how we need to analyse it, rather than try to make it look like some very sinister, conspiratorial, collusion type of effect between an entire community. I think that's very damaging, and we shouldn't really go down that road, to be honest.
But some of the calls, on the other hand, that have come through so far this morning have been rather encouraging. It suggests to me that we've got a rather more mature response to this sort of atrocity than perhaps we had in the past.
I would really agree with you there. I was actually quite taken aback with some of the calls. And, you know, we need to recognise these people are nutcases. And you know, and thankfully, if they really were, you know, 50,000, as I think, you know, the lady said, we would have, you know, maybe 100 incidents every day. And we probably still wouldn't get to 50,000. You know, and that's the reality. I think there are some very crazy people out there, but I think that they're thankfully in a very, very small minority. Now, of course, we have to do our utmost best to be vigilant, you know, to speak out against it and try to do our utmost best. But I think to some extent, you know, like, you know, living in a big city, and especially, you know, a city which is a magnet like London, for pretty much everywhere in the world, you know, it's unfortunate, but it is part and parcel. I mean, when we had the IRA bombings, they weren't sort of bombing, you know, Swansea or somewhere, you know, where they weren't going to get the attention. They were going to do it in London.
They did bomb Brighton, of course, because that's where.
Of course they did, but there was a
Conservative
political
Party was indeed.
Right, exactly.
Conference thing. But listen, I think it's not a partisan, political thing to say that I think those words, perhaps by Sadiq Khan, were misjudged because they can be taken out of context. If you listen to them in their full context and their wider context, they seem reasonable, don't they?
Well, I think what he did actually say was that living in a big city, you know, we have to perhaps be more vigilant. We have to be, you know, I don't think he was saying it somehow condoning it or accepting that it's just a fact of life. I don't think he was actually saying it.
I don't think he was meaning that, no.
No, I mean, I think, you know, and I think also as fellow Londoners, fellow people of this community, let's give each other the benefit of the doubt. Let's not please rush to, you know, some very dark and sinister interpretation of what somebody might have meant. I mean, if it's blatant, of course you're fully entitled to hold that type of view. But if it could be read in a dozen ways or whatever, let's not look at the most horrific, the most you know, dark, the most depressing interpretation, because I think then we're just looking for things, aren't we? Really, you know.
Indeed, Abbas, and I thank you, Abbas in.